All righty, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the Great Neighborhoods Committee meeting for this month. I am Victoria Watlington, your chair, and we've got quite a bit of an agenda today. We're going to talk about some things that I know are near and dear to our committee members' hearts, including our Anti-Displacement Committee or NEST committee update, as well as community engagement. Um, I will begin with introductions and then we'll do a quick overview of the agenda and then we'll get started. So I'll start with those of us that are online, committee members, beginning with the Vice Chairman. Councilmember Grant.
Oh, I'm sorry. Malcolm Brown, Committee Vice Chairman.
Renee Johnson, District 4.
Hey, Jim. Can I call you back?
Hi, everyone. Matt Newton, District 5 Committee Member.
Rick Phipps at large, committee member.
And I do not see any additional council members visiting in, so we can go ahead and introduce our staff members, starting with Sean Heath.
Good afternoon, Sean Heath, City Manager's Office and Interim Director of Housing and Neighborhood Services.
Rebecca Hefner, Housing and Neighborhood Services.
And for those that are online, staff. Don't be bashful.
I'm Anna Schloinas, City Attorney's Office.
Julia Martin, City Manager's Office.
Nicole. I see we've got Nicole Story from Housing and Neighborhood Services as well. Are there any other staff members online?
Donata Jackson, Office of Constituent Services.
Thanks so much. And then last but not least, we've got some very special guests here today, some of our community leaders, or at least one or two of our community leaders. And so if you are representing your community here today, please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Adrienne Martinez. I represent the North End Community Coalition. I'm on the board there. Former resident of the North End, but I actually now live in the neighborhood of Belmont. So representing a couple different neighborhoods.
Yeah. Welcome. Thank you for
Thanks,
coming.
Victoria. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Adrienne.
It's been a while.
It has. All righty. I believe we'll have one more joining us later on. In the meantime, we will go ahead and get started with our agenda and we can decide whether or not we want to go with it as is or if we want to try to hang on and wait for Travis. So today we're going to cover at least 4 items. First of all, community engagement and how we can enable our community leaders and our neighborhood leaders to get the word out so that people know what's going on. We're going to cover our Anti-Displacement Committee update, as well as the Housing and Neighborhood Services progress year to date. At the beginning of the year, we laid out our strategy and our priorities for the year that we wanted to work on, and we want to make sure that we keep that ever before us so that we can ensure that by the end of the year, we've got real policy work that we've been able to accomplish, and then we will follow that up with a couple of admin items. So at this point, I will turn it over to Sean, and we'll begin.
Thank you, Councilmember Watlington. We can jump straight into the community engagement presentation. We'll have Deputy Director Hefner will provide some framing to get us started.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to share with you this presentation today. Nicole Story, who is our Division Manager of Community Engagement, will be walking you through Neighbors Building Neighborhoods. So this is not the entire suite of our community engagement work. As you know, community engagement spans all the way from neighborhood programs to our Mayor's Youth Employment Program and Job and Career Readiness Training, as well as into programs like Keep Charlotte Beautiful. So we have a wide range of community engagement programs, and today we're going to focus on Neighbors Building Neighborhoods. So a deeper dive into how we engage residents, resident leaders and neighborhood organizations and support them in meeting their goals. In particular, supporting neighborhoods as we emerge from the stay-at-home portions of the pandemic and try to navigate our new hybrid world. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Nicole Story. And during the presentation, she will also be introducing and Adrian Martinez and Travis Roseborough to share with you some reflections from their neighborhood organizations and some of the ways that they have successfully engaged with Nicole and her team in their work. Nicole?
Good afternoon. Are you able to hear me okay? Excellent. We are all having our host of technology issues today. I guess it's like when it rains, everything happens. So good afternoon. My name is Nicole Story. I have the true pleasure of managing the City of Charlotte's Community Engagement Division. And I thank Rebecca for that kind introduction. And so I'm hoping that we can share a little bit today about some of the work that we do and how we do it. We have the true pleasure this afternoon of being joined by two of our neighborhood leaders. And I know I saw Adrian on the call. Travis might be struggling to get connected to technology as well. Wendy, I believe he's going to give you a call. And then we'll talk a little bit about our experience over the pandemic, what we have seen, what we have heard, what we've been kind of feeling in the work that we do and through the connections that we have throughout community. We've also spent some time thinking about kind of where we are in our lives and our work and where our neighborhood. Are you still able to hear me? Thumbs up, anybody? Perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm getting a muted signal on my end. How we're thinking about the future with all that we've learned in the pandemic experience, what we're hearing folks needing, and just kind of what's going on in our own neighborhoods and our own homes as we contemplate the space of hopefully being able to accomplish post-pandemic, recognizing that for many of us, the pandemic is still very real and in the now. Next slide, please. Okay, so a little bit of background here. This is one of, I can't say my favorite projects because I have so many favorite projects, but this is a project that the Lincoln Heights community did over at Northwest School of the Arts, and an incredible welcoming doorway that they were able to create. And it really captures some of why we do the work that we do. We recognize that inclusive neighborhoods, healthy neighborhoods, safe neighborhoods, not only from the statistical standpoint, but also the perception of safety, are really the foundation of a vibrant and thriving city. We know that our neighborhood organizations are a key connection point between the residents and the city, and really without organized neighborhoods, we really struggle to be able to connect independently with the almost 900,000 people that are in the city. And so we depend on that backbone of neighborhood organization as a communication structure. We believe that residents are stronger advocates for themselves and for others when they are engaged. They're better employees, better partners, better parents, better neighbors, all of the above. Residents who know their neighbors are more likely to take care of their properties. They're more willing to help one another. They're more willing to approach situations with curiosity as opposed to condemnation or blame. Recognizing that we all struggle in this life and we need help from time to time, being engaged and knowing one another helps us to move into those relationships with more empathy. And relationships matter to getting things done. Being able to understand how to connect and whom to connect with is essential for us to be good self-advocates and to be able to care for others. Next slide, please. So some of the things that we see as keys to success in our work, again, are those neighborhood leaders and the concept of organized neighborhoods. Our residents being engaged, being able to lead with trust and communication and connections. And we often hear it said, and we believe it strongly, people don't care what you know or what you want them to know until they know that you care. And so ensuring that we remain continually on the ground to have those relationships is really important. Education, awareness, technical skills, emotional skills, all of these things come into context in neighborhoods. Having project opportunities. We do a lot of work to inspire what's possible. And to learn what's possible, we depend on our neighbors who show us their creativity and their hard work to get things done. And then those projects become models for others. We believe as a government agency that we need to provide some incentive for folks to be able to accomplish the projects that matter to them. And we know sometimes working together, once you've already worked a hard day at your job or cared for your children or your parents or others, need some support. And so we provide that funding, again, to incentivize that work, but we provide technical support and navigational support along the way, recognizing that things that people do in the civic space, like speed humps and sidewalks and park spaces and landscaping projects, are all perhaps outside of what folks do on a daily basis. And so they understandably need some help to learn how to navigate that. And particularly when the city's involved from a permitting or approval standpoint, we just need to be helpful. Next slide, please. So these are some of the programs that we offer. This is not intended to be an inclusive list of all of the programming that community engagement provides, but these are programs and opportunities that are specific to the neighborhood experience. And so I know that we've got a favored graduate of the Civic Leadership Academy on our call, Councilmember Watlington. This is a cohort-based learning opportunity. It's leadership advancement. It provides education. It provides personal development, networking and advocacy. This is really where we help people to understand how to get things done and to help them improve their understanding of the process to achieve that. Our neighborhood board retreats began back in 2013. This is generally a twice annual in-person opportunity for neighborhoods to work with a professional facilitator. We generally love to provide breakfast and lunch, and we look forward to doing that again post-pandemic, but we look to these groups to define a work plan with 3 to 5 goals that they can accomplish within the next year. And then we check in with them periodically to see what they need along the way and to track if they've been able to achieve these projects. And often they do. Sometimes they switch projects. Sometimes things take a little bit longer than we expect to, but we see great successes from that program. Additionally, we provide neighborhood and individual training. There are over 35 live and on-demand workshops. You can find those on demand on our website. So if you can't sleep in the evening or you weren't available to attend when the workshop was live, you still have an opportunity to view that. And these are in addition to our job and career readiness training, which we provide specific for youth, and we're able to engage about 1,000 youth per year through that effort. We credit our great partners at 311 with administering the Speakers Bureau, which is an opportunity for folks to get speakers to come to their organizations or virtually. I always advertise this as a great way to kind of bait and switch. People like to show up to a neighborhood meeting to learn something from a city official or others. And once you've got them at that meeting, then you have a great chance to know them better and to engage and to invite them to be part of the neighborhood group. We also have our service area liaisons. At full strength, they are a team of 8 people that are really relationship managers and advocates, and they can help neighborhoods to get organized. They can help them connect to resources throughout the city and external partners as well. And they're there to be problem solvers and to provide that technical support. And then additionally, we have a voluntary neighborhood organization contact list. And this is a subscriber-based resource that provides information about grants, rezoning activity, workshops, programs, events, and more. We do send out a newsletter through Neighborhood Organization Contact List twice a month. Anybody and everybody is invited to be part of the NOCL. You don't have to be a neighborhood leader, but we do ask our neighborhoods to provide at least one primary point of contact through that NOCL so that we can remain connected. Next slide, please. We do offer a number of grant programs. Our neighborhood matching grant program is kind of the Cadillac, not only of our city, but as we have opportunity to speak with peers across the country, folks are just astounded that we are able to provide neighborhood associations up to $25,000 in grants. That is not a lifetime total, that's a per project total. And some of the things that we see there are community safety projects, beautification projects, bike and pedestrian infrastructure. If you've seen those little sign toppers on street signs throughout the city, we've probably paid for that through this program. That's a very popular way for neighbors to brand their community, to help folks know that they're in a neighborhood when they arrive, and it's a really cost-effective project. We also fund gardens, festivals, some limited facade improvements, strategic support. Generally, we award about 60 to 80 neighborhood matching grants a year. And then additionally, we provide special incentive grants. And these grants are generally not things that are within our existing budget. We may fund them with cost savings when possible. We also work with a lot of partners to fund these grants. And so things that you see there are little free pantries. We provided personal cleanup kits through the pandemic to folks that were engaged with Keep Charlotte Beautiful. We did an MVP grant, which stands for Meeting Virtually at Present, so that we could pay for Zoom licenses, WebEx, whatever the preferred platform of choice was for a neighborhood, so that they could remain connected through the pandemic. We did a special grant called CLT 250, obviously to celebrate the 250th anniversary. Sometimes we'll do grants for National Night Out. Again, when there's partner funding for these or cost savings, it's a great opportunity for us to reinvest that money into the community. So the pandemic, I feel like we have to take a long pause as we consider what the world has been like over the last 2+ years. I think there's sometimes a perception that the pandemic was quiet in neighborhoods, and truthfully, it wasn't. It was just different. So one of the things that we did as staff, as many of us have, is we implemented virtual delivery across our programs. Everything went to virtually capable. We saw participation increase in our programming as a result. We were able to eliminate some barriers of transportation, of childcare, of folks that couldn't maybe get away from their job to come down to our offices for workshops. We also recognize that the people that were falling behind before the pandemic are further behind as a result of the pandemic. Folks that lacked digital access or digital literacy or just even digital comfort really struggled to remain connected in that space. We actually issued a record number of neighborhood matching grants. And we found that those neighborhood matching grants were bigger than usual. Generally, we were awarding grants of about $8,000. In the pandemic, those grants increased, the average amount of those grants increased to a little over $11,000. We also saw the same thing y'all are seeing in your homes and businesses. Everything took longer. There were supply chain issues, there were contractor issues, there were people just exhausted from doing life. And so we've seen a lot of those projects take longer than they would have traditionally, but certainly understandable. And we've extended contracts to provide as much support there as possible. We also saw record participation in Keep Charlotte Beautiful. 3,612 bags of trash were collected, and that's a 54% increase in active volunteer organizations since pre-pandemic. Next slide, please. So it is my true pleasure to be able to present to you some of our amazing community leaders this afternoon and to ask them to share about their experience and their needs and kind of what they're seeing in their communities. And the first one is Travis Roseboro. Travis Roseboro is with Back Creek Chase community, and over the years, they're a pretty consistent flyer in our neighborhood matching grant program. Proud to congratulate them on over $80,000 granted in their programs over the years. And so I want to invite Travis to share a little bit about his neighborhood and then to share with us his experience.
Well, hopefully you guys can hear me. I had some computer issues earlier, but just wanted to say how thankful we are. I'm Travis Roseboro, and I am the current HOA president of Back Creek Chase. And this program has been a blessing to our community in so many levels, on so many levels. We have been the recipients of over $80,000 that we've used to make our community a home. We come together and we meet on a monthly basis and decide what we need to do. The picture that you see is a picture of the benches that we did. We did friendship benches. So initially what we did is we came up with a slogan that we just wanted to make our homes more of a community. And we didn't have any place for us to meet as a group. So we were able to put 6 benches throughout the community with lights and made our community more walkable. We were having some issues also with safety. So we met with the Charlotte Police Department, and they gave us some recommendations about lighting. So we went to the project once again, the city of Charlotte, and they helped us with our lighting. And we also were one of the recipients of the Centennial with Charlotte, and we were able to do a party. I can speak so long about what this program has meant to Charlotte. It's done a lot for us as individuals, but also as a community. We've also had the ability to work together. We've started using resources that we were going to use to do enhancements in the communities, to do more outreach. We've worked with the Boys Club, the Boy Scouts. They've come into the community and helped us clean up, and we did a pizza party for them, as well as we were able to do a graduation program for all of the recent graduates. And during COVID, things changed a lot, so we had to kind of pivot. So instead of doing a party, we did a parade which we could practice social distance, but also acknowledge people and what they were doing in the face of COVID. You know, kids were still going to school, parents were still trying to provide some type of relief for them. So it was a way for us to come out and to come together. Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I've got questions that I want to make sure that we get you all's perspective on. So
okay.
Tell me a little bit about, and committee members, please feel free to jump in, and Adrian certainly as well. Can you tell me a little bit about, sounds like you guys have a strong group of folks that come out. Do you tend to see some of the same folks, or how would you describe the level of participation based on how many other residents are in your neighborhood?
It wanes sometimes. Mm-hmm. We have a core people, but we do get other people who come and they see that we're participating and they volunteer in different ways. One of the things when COVID hit, we had a lot of retirees that were participating, and they were, very concerned about their health. And they would say, you know what, I'm not going to come to the event, but I will pack bags, or I will pick up trash, or I will deliver tables. So the numbers go back and forth. We have probably maybe 20% of our communities. We have over 135 houses in Back Creek Chase, but that number, we have some people who may have vacation or have to go out of town, but they do come back. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. How do you tend to get the word out for what you all are doing? Do you rely on email, or do you all, like some neighborhoods have block captains? The reason I'm asking the question is because here lately I've come across a lot of folks who don't necessarily know what's going on in the community. Mm-hmm. Ask them, have you ever attended a neighborhood meeting? The answer is probably no. How do you, or are you reaching, or what would you need to reach those groups?
Well, we have a 4-tier kind of communication system. The first is we have the same meeting at the same time every month. So the last Saturday of the month, we meet at Sunflower Bakery, going off of 49, going into Harrisburg. So we have a meeting where we discuss things, so people know that if they want to come by, or if they need to have a comment, they can do it there. As well as we have emails, we have a text chain, as well as we have a little ball on our mailbox that we normally will walk informations. We'll print out 130 flyers with information. And lastly, we do have block captains. So each block captain is responsible for 10 homes. So we have 10 block captains, and they just either go across the street or go next door and just disseminate information. A lot of times we'll have people who cannot come. They might be elderly, but we get their votes and we get their point of views from the block captains. And the block captains have a lot of responsibility in making sure that we know what the community needs.
Thank you for that. Adrian, did you want to weigh in? No pressure.
Sure, yeah. I didn't want to take away from Travis's time as well, but certainly maybe just to orient folks, the North End Community Coalition actually represents 8 neighborhoods in Charlotte's North End. Bright Walk, Druid Hills, have to use my cheat sheet so I don't forget anybody. Greenville, Genesis Park, Graham Heights, Lockwood, JT Williams, and Park at Oak Lawn. So we have maintained our community-wide meetings, we call them. So it's essentially all of those 8 neighborhoods. We have one meeting to try to update everybody all at once. We quickly pivoted into a virtual format as soon as the pandemic hit. And we did see some drop off in attendance early on, but it started to pick back up. I think what helped was having just continuous ongoing development and there being questions in the North End that it drove people to come, and also having, you know, as Travis was saying, a standing meeting date and time. We established that pretty early on, so people knew, you know, I think it's like third Tuesday every month, or sorry, every quarter. That's when we would be having our community-wide meetings. That aside, each of the neighborhoods that do have either a community association or an HOA continue to have their own neighborhood meetings as well. So it's an additional opportunity to capture both feedback as well as share out information about that kind of impacting all of our neighborhoods in the North End. So sometimes information was shared at both that was duplicative, but it was on purpose because sometimes those attendance can be different. As far as getting the word out, I will say we have struggled with that, really. It's one of the hardest things because the board is mostly inclined to use email, to use social media, but we also recognize that there is a huge digital divide for our part of the city. And so that is one thing that we did struggle with early on, as I mentioned, with getting people to attend our meetings. You know, if they don't have access to a device or to internet, our residents are not going to be able to attend these virtual engagements. So a lot of and you know, I'll kind of save additional comments around the actual specific activities that we've done in the last couple of years to target that. But a lot of what we've done has been to try to close that gap over the last 2 years. You know, I think it's just going to be a continuous ongoing exercise for us. It's going to be one of our highest priorities. It remains one of our highest priorities. We do, when possible, send mailers. We do not have block captains, but as I mentioned, the fact that we do have an 8 neighborhood coalition, we actually have leaders from every one of those neighborhoods, either represented on the board or in one of our committees, to ensure that those folks who are representing those neighborhoods can actually take that information back. So I think we could stand to do a lot more as it relates to getting the word out, ensuring that our community knows about the resources that are available, particularly those coming out of the city and the county. So, you know, I think that that's where we could probably continue to work with neighborhood and housing services to think of creative ways to do that.
To that end, and this question is for both of you, if you want to answer, what does help look like? I've heard things in regards to like assistance getting some of the neighborhood matching grant things actually done, but it sounds like both of you all's groups are pretty savvy when it comes to getting through the administrative things. I've heard, to your point, about for neighbors that are not necessarily plugged in digitally, that there's some assistance needed in that space. What does help look like, or what would you like to see enhancements as it relates to our community engagement offerings?
Well, I'll start. I mean, I think first of all, you guys are doing an outstanding job in what you are offering. The community is my community is changing a lot. We have a lot of renters coming in, which allows us to impact them in different ways because they fall in love with our community, and we try to get them involved in ways to help. Just keep being a resource, keep allowing us to have this opportunity to expand our community. I think that's what probably be the best thing that I could say, is because you guys have been very responsive to the needs. I know we had a grant and we were trying to get it processed, and when COVID hit, the volunteer, we were real concerned about that, and you guys pivoted to allow us to be able to get the needed hours so we could fulfill that. So, I mean, kudos to you guys. I can't think of one thing specifically, but just keep up the good work.
Yeah, where I would chime in is I think it's more of an aspirational goal. I don't know how much of it we can actually get done, but it's really building on the connectedness of our neighborhoods across all of Charlotte Mecklenburg. Quite honestly, I think that, as you mentioned, Victoria, we have a good mature neighborhood coalition or community coalition, which I'm grateful for because we have benefited from multiple years of receiving the neighborhood matching grants, both at an individual neighborhood level for the neighborhoods that make up NEC, as well as NEC itself. Actually, that photo with the orange shirts is from NEC Fest, which is a festival that we used to hold essentially every year. And that is one of the times where we did receive a neighborhood matching grant to support one of those events. In any case, I think because we have a slightly mature program or sort of infrastructure, we could both support other neighborhoods that are not as mature if we were better connected, as well as benefit from being able to glean from those who are even more mature than ours. So one of the areas, or a couple of the areas where we have highest priority, I mentioned the digital divide. You know, we are an area that struggles with access to food, right? So fresh food, grocery store, you know, would be great. Not that the city has any, you know, ability to necessarily deliver on that, but it is something that's just high on our priority list, and we'd love to hear from neighborhoods that have done it, right? As well as mental health, workforce development, childcare, and early education. These are sort of the highest priorities, I know, across the city as well, but those, you know, specifically for our neighborhoods. And, you know, if we could connect with other either neighborhoods or community associations, coalitions, what have you, that have done work in this area and have made strides, or at least been able to move the needle a little bit, we want to learn from that and duplicate those efforts without having to kind of come up with it from scratch again.
Yeah.
I like that. Councilmember Johnson, did you have something?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank both of the neighborhood leaders for attending and just sharing their feedback on the programs. And Travis, I'd love to follow up with you.
Okay.
And just hear from you more directly, and maybe, you know, if you can help other neighborhood or subdivisions in our area kind of replicate what Back Creek Chase is doing. That, I think that would be great. I do have a question as far as investors and purchasing homes in your subdivision. Is that a challenge that you're, and it's for both of you, is that a challenge that your association or group has talked about? And can you think of any assistance or any ideas that, or have you talked about any ideas that the city could do or might be helpful for you all to combat this ongoing challenge?
Yeah, I'd like to. We talk about this maybe every meeting. More and more of our community is being absorbed by investors. And when I mean investors, I mean people from California, people from Georgia, and they're making it into an apartment complex. And we have issues because we may communicate with the owner of the property, but the owner of the property doesn't commute with the renter. And a lot of times the renter, they may have a mentality of, well, you know, I'm renting this house for $2,000 a month, you know, but the community aspect of it is sometimes lost. They might not want to keep up the property. They may have multiple families living in the house that are not related. So we're fighting with ways to try to communicate with them, because normally when, the people in the neighborhood would live in the neighborhood, but when you're trying to make a difference, a lot of times these owners, they rent it and the people are transient. They might not be there. So we have that discussion. It is one of the most pivotal things with our community because it's so small, and any change in the dynamic is definitely impacted. And I was on a call with one of the board members this morning about another home that was sold to an investment group. We're challenged with that, and we would love somebody to come up with a solution because we know housing is very important in Charlotte, but it's changing the dynamics of the community. And a lot of the people who were in those homes have been replaced by renters who a lot of times, some of them are good, but a lot of times they have a different mentality and their focus is not in developing the community, but to do what they need to do and to go to their next phase of life.
Yeah, I would agree, Travis, on some of the challenges around gentrification that are occurring in the North End. There are several neighborhoods that have been targeted pretty heavily, Druid Hills, Lockwood, Greenville. Those are kind of the top neighborhoods, I would say, that are being targeted right now. But even Graham Heights is starting to see some of those where it used to be a more affordable option for first-time home buyers. I will say on the positive, we do have investment in the form of like, I think it's called Dream Key now, what used to be CMHP. They've invested quite heavily in the North End, and we've got several neighborhoods, including the one where I purchased my first home, Bright Walk, that have really been great examples of ways to offer opportunities to have blended neighborhoods. But I do know that, like, from a home ownership perspective, that is one of the challenges. So you might have affordable housing in terms of apartments, but often they're targeting one of the lower categories of affordable housing. And so we've got that missing middle, essentially, folks that could afford potentially to buy a home, but are priced out because of the market. I don't know that I have any real suggestions for solutions, but certainly we've known that this was an issue for the North End for a while. And so we've been talking about it as a neighborhood coalition. One of the first grants that we received outside of the North End, outside of the neighborhood matching grants was through the United Way. And we held a series on gentrification to offer residents an opportunity to just learn about what this means. What are the positive components? What are the negative components of gentrification? How can we, it's a vehicle that we can't stop moving, but we can sort of help direct where it goes. And so I think that's one of the things we had to recognize early on, where what are the ways, if we know that a developer is going to come into our neighborhood, what are the ways that we can work with that developer to ensure that they're bringing something back to the community? And so we had that series early on. We're actually going to bring it back at the end of this summer to kind of refresh it and have a new lens on it because of all the development that's been going on. I think one of the ways that I wish there was an opportunity to do is really targeting that rental community that could potentially be homeowners, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ones that have the opportunity to perhaps afford a mortgage, but maybe need support on the down payment, or need some help to get even just an understanding of what it takes to become a homeowner, because the North End is actually made up of about 50% renters.
Mm-hmm.
That's unfortunate because as the rents go up due to the housing prices going up, that's going to force a number of those people out that could potentially have shifted into home ownership in one of these homes.
Yeah, I wish we could do more of a program. And while you were talking, I was thinking maybe if we could come up with some type of grant program to help some of the the renters, because I would say we're probably more than 50% in our neighborhood, like 65% just renting. And you know, I talked to some of the renters, and they're at wit's end because a lot of times they can't save money, and they just don't have anywhere else to go. I've spoken to several of them who would say they would love to buy, but it's so difficult.
Well, thank you for that information. We have been talking about as a committee and as a council on a more of a focus on home ownership, but we know the reality is many first-time or buyers are competing against the investors, and so there's this. It's a challenge. And so this question is for city staff. One of the things we talked about, or I know that I've brought up, is potentially helping homeowners association groups with their bylaws or with legal fees in changing their bylaws to write in that only X number of units can be purchased by investors. So is that something that the neighborhood leaders could look at, a grant for legal fees to consult with an attorney about changing their bylaws to protect their neighborhood from gentrification or saturation of investors or developers?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we have hosted a workshop a couple of times recently that has been probably could strengthen to be promoted in a different way. The workshop was really around the different kinds of neighborhood organization and what rights they have, and particularly for neighborhoods that are considering nonprofit affiliation. And so I do think there's an opportunity to make that more informative in what rights each of those levels of organization has, and to share that as information and education so that residents have decision-making power and have that knowledge to understand what works best for them. We certainly don't want to tell them that. We can guide them through education to make informed decisions. Additionally, Neighborhood Matching Grant does provide funds for strategic planning. And so we would look at legal support as that strategic planning for the neighborhood. And they could use that in whatever way they felt was needed for their community at the time.
If you'd like, I could just give a quick overview of what we're doing as staff around supporting neighborhoods in terms of managing through the corporate buyer issue. I was going to give this update as part of Nest Commission, but it seems a good time here, so I'll do this quickly, and then if you have questions, we can address them later. But we have, again, I mean, I like what Travis said about a tiered approach to communications. We have a tiered approach in the works for our education and training and awareness around corporate buyers, the state of the housing market, and what residents can do, both as individuals if they're seeking home ownership assistance and at the neighborhood level. So we have been working with members of the Nest Commission. It's part of one of their work streams, as well as some neighborhood leaders and our community partners around designing marketing and awareness materials and collateral that can be distributed by neighborhoods, through social, by the city, and also be used at neighborhood organizations. We're also planning, I believe Nicole's team is meeting with the county later this week to collaborate, as they've done such great work on analysis around corporate buyers. And so in addition then to the training or awareness and marketing materials, as Nicole mentioned, we are thinking through how to incorporate into the training more ways to support neighborhoods in making decisions about how they want to organize, and what are the rights and pros and cons under the various types of ways to get organized. So this isn't something that we can do once and be done with. This is an issue for our housing market and our neighborhoods that we'll have to continually address. But those are some of the ways that we're getting started with that work.
Okay.
Thank you
for that information.
Did we have any additional questions for our neighborhood leaders before we go on to some opportunities that are being considered?
Nope.
Travis and Adrian, I want to thank you so much, not only for your time today, but your continued commitment to your neighborhoods and your partnership in our programs.
And I will say, Travis and Adrian, if you want to hang out for the rest of the meeting, feel free to be a part. We'd love your comments on some of the upcoming things. If you have to go, totally understand. But by all means, stay around if you can.
Thank you. I will.
So again, these are some reflections, and I appreciate Deputy Director Hefner sharing about the educational components that we're partnering with NEST to contribute. These are some of the things that we're thinking. We're excited to hear your feedback and your ideas. As mentioned, the Civic Leadership Academy is offered twice annually. It's an incredible program for folks to advance in their leadership. Something that we are observing about folks in the CLA is that they generally are working toward personal, individual leadership opportunities and just wanting to become better leaders within the city of Charlotte. But they're not necessarily taking that learning back to become president of their neighborhood association or to have a seat on those boards. And so we're feeling the need for perhaps a civic leadership academy that's specific for neighborhood leaders, that would provide them those technical skills, that would provide networking and mentorship between neighborhoods at all different levels of organization, and perhaps providing some incentive funds or catalyst funds for them to get started on projects within their neighborhoods. We're also feeling like we need to do a better job of embracing our Spanish speakers in the community and perhaps develop a Spanish language delivery of Civic Leadership Academy. We've been really excited. Our last cohort of the CLA graduated a 15-year-old youth as part of this work. And so we're seeing more youth interested in our programs. And we have been able to consistently for 3 years now, been able to deliver a kind of a abbreviated Civic Leadership Academy for youth within the Mayor's Youth Employment Program. And we would like to be able to offer that more broadly throughout the community. We have existing funding for that CLA for youth, but would need additional resource to look at that CLA for neighborhood leaders and Spanish language delivery. We're all feeling kind of coming out of these shells, this cocooning as part of moving past the pandemic. And again, we're at all different levels there, but we're considering a mini grant to incentivize neighborhoods who either have found a reason to organize or have been organized, but the organization has fallen a little bit by the wayside in COVID and perhaps needs some funding for collateral, for promotion, for hosting upcoming events, including National Night Out, which will be here before we know it in August, community reunions, back to school, even moving into holiday festivals. Again, this program would be unfunded at this time, but it would be something that we could offer with a very short application and a quick turnaround. These projects generally don't have the multifaceted process and number of steps as our larger grants, and so we can approve those at the staff level pretty quickly and be able to get those funds out the door to these neighborhoods as they're emerging from the pandemic. We're hearing increased need for canvassing, and to be able to offer that canvassing with awareness of all of the languages that are spoken in our community. We don't know quite how we're going to deliver that yet, but we know that we need to move in that direction and probably develop some partnerships and some resource to support that area. That would be something that's unfunded at this time, but definitely an identified need and something that we're interested in trying to figure out. Additionally, we are working on a community engagement neighborhood organizing toolkit, and that would have an internal component for folks that are working in the public information space, communication space, engagement space in the city, so that they could be better informed when they begin their work and plan their engagement activities in communities, but also to have a neighborhood organizing component. And we do not require additional resources to have that happen. Additionally, we are working internally on a resource guide that would put all of the resources that we're aware of that might have benefit to neighborhoods in one place. And so we're looking forward to having that ready in the pretty near term here. So that is kind of what's on our mind. Next slide, please.
Just as a process, perfect. Perfect. Thank you for that, Nicole. Can you go back to the last slide? I don't see any questions currently from the committee. So just wanted to follow up because this feels like really the meat of where we're going from now. As it relates, I love what I see here as far as the enhancements to the Civic Leadership Academy and the boost grants, the canvassing activities and the toolkit, and really standardizing some of this work. What does the timing look like on this? And maybe this is a question for Sean. At what point should we expect to see an update in terms of the nuts and bolts of how some of these could be rolled out?
And I'm going to invite Sean or Rebecca to respond there because, again, some of these are funded, like the resource guide and the neighborhood organization toolkit, but others are going to need some additional resource.
Sure. So what we've tried to do here in this slide is share with you what we're thinking about where these programs have opportunity to grow and expand and enhance. But this isn't aligned with a programmatic budget or specific resources. And so what we can certainly bring this back to committee as we begin to think through what these opportunities look like and how we prioritize what we're already doing within HNS to create some capacity to move these opportunities forward. The bottom two there on the resource guide and the organizing toolkit, those are things that are in progress now. And so we can bring those back when they are completed and get your assistance in disseminating. For today, we're primarily looking for your feedback and thoughts about, do we have the right things on this list? Are we moving in the right direction? And what else do we need to consider?
So then I'll pose my question to my fellow committee members. And I'd appreciate it if you each could weigh in. What is your appetite for this? And as we think about some of the ARPA dollars and some of the unfunded dollars, as we think about our budget for this year, we know we're going to have some ability to fund some of this. Are you all, tell me what your level of interest and I'll say excitement, if you will, or appetite is for this work. When would you like to see it back? Councilmember Graham, we can start with you. Councilmember Newton.
All right, I'll take it. I want to commend you, Rebecca and staff, all that you do, and I'm willing to take this up sooner than later. I don't know how that looks, but I think what you're getting at is seeing some information back before we pass this year's budget, right?
Well, not necessarily back before the budget, but certainly the idea would be that, okay, we've seen it here. Let's decide if this is something that we want to get moving on, or if this is something that we're kind of TBD on.
We have our next budget straw vote on Wednesday, and I think we're moving fast on it. So I'm on board with learning more and maybe getting a better sense of what is needed to do it before we're done with this year's budget. And to the extent that you don't, I'm still on board with looking at it. I will be around, unfortunately, when we move on it, but I would love to weigh in, and I'm very supportive.
Councilmember Fitz?
Yeah, I'm impressed with the volume of opportunities through which we encourage citizen and neighborhood participation. I don't know at this point. I'm trying to figure out what, I mean, when you come to appropriating more dollars to it, I don't know. Um, I don't know. I'm kind of lukewarm on that, unless we're talking about putting more dollars into matching grants or something. But it seems to me that there are plenty of opportunities. I think that communities can get engaged, and it seems as if that just with the number of meetings and such that we have in the city, uh, not to mention other areas, county or whatever, it's just a whole lot of meetings, rezoning community meetings. I mean, you can have a meeting every day of the week if you really wanted uh, to be engaged, and we got other areas, social media, Nextdoor. I found that Nextdoor is really a good sounding board for a lot of communities that actually sign up for it. But I think that we do have a lot of ways that they can get engaged, and I do think that to the extent that neighborhoods and residents want to be engaged, that they would definitely take advantage of the opportunities that we have available right now.
Councilmember Graham?
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited about this. Now that we're kind of rolling out of COVID and we're kind of getting back together again, and some of the work that we're doing in our quarters of opportunity, especially those neighborhoods that are in the crescent, and that need support and to really need to know what's happening for them and in some cases to them, having new opportunities and more engagement and more resources, quite frankly, may be a good thing to kind of help them kind of move along. So I'm excited that we're kind of inventorying what we've done, but more importantly, how we can kind of change the gas in some cases from regular to premium in terms of our engagement with neighborhood associations and getting them to be able to be informed. And we got a lot of programs, true, but I'm not sure that we really do a good job of really kind of getting the word out about what's in our toolkit. And this may be an opportunity for us to really kind of rethink about how we communicate and how we engage and how we incentivize neighborhood organizations to kind of get more involved and more engaged, and so we can get the word out. So,
Councilmember Johnson?
I think I'm kind of in the middle. I know that our neighbor, we have wonderful programs, but how well are those programs being utilized? Like, do we need more marketing for the current program? I'd like to see the data, if you will, on how many residents are using the programs that we currently have. I know when I was at the polls, I met quite a few people that said they wanted to get involved and do more things for the city. So I'd like to know what the utilization is now. We know from the response to some of our large projects like the 2040 plan and the UDO that there was a minimal response. So I'd like to see how we're currently branding and perhaps if these new opportunities will increase the branding or increase the overall communication about all of our programs, that would be great. One priority that I see on this list is Spanish language delivery. We know that there's a large Latino population, so we might consider that sooner or later. But if our staff is doing an amazing job with their program, if they recommend this, we can support it. But I'd also like to see what the data is on are we doing enough with what we already have?
Got it.
Councilmember, would you like me to respond to that question?
Yes.
We have consistently maintained wait lists in the Civic Leadership Academy through every cohort. In FY21, we awarded 102 grants. We overspent our available budget within the grant programs by about $76,000, and we're able to reallocate departmental funding to not turn down any grants there. Our approval rate in neighborhood matching grants is about a little over 98%. So it is fully our hope and expectation to expend all dollars. And we are hopeful that improvements, we have more interest than we have available resources currently. And so I wholeheartedly agree that we will always need to do a better job of promotion, but all of our existing programs are already oversubscribed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. I don't see any additional hands up. So what I'm going to ask for, Sean, is let's circle back on this one. Based on what Nicole just shared, it sounds like we are certainly in a space where we need to increase capacity for this. So if we could circle back on this one in our next meeting next month, that would be great.
Understood. Thank you.
All right. Let's move on to the next item on our agenda. We've got 28 minutes left. I think we'll be okay.
Great. Okay. All right. We're going to go to Deputy Director Hefner for the Nest update.
And I will run you through this one quickly, and already gave part of it in the first section, so this will be short and sweet. So as you know, the Nest Commission kicked off in February under the leadership of co-chairs Kim Graham and Justin Harlow. The Nest Commission has now met 3 times and spent that time determining how they would work together and organize and structure their work and what they would want to focus on. So they had some information, kind of context setting. What does the housing landscape look like? What are the city's current programs and activities? How is Nest related to the comp plan and the UDO? And then the last meeting, and thank you, Mr. Phipps, for joining the group last meeting. They organized their work into 3 work streams. So the work streams are lay of the land, which is an opportunity to look at land acquisition, site control, and home ownership models, looking at things potentially like community land trust, land acquisition strategy along transit lines, and again, the education and programs for related to corporate buyers. So that's the work stream that's supporting Nicole and her team as they work on those materials. The next one is around program improvements and policy gaps. So that team will be looking at what we do currently and making recommendations for improvements related to things like property tax relief programs, our partnerships with financial institutions, rental assistance, housing rehab, any innovations in housing production, and helping us maximize and optimize our Staying in Place initiative. And then the last group is one that will be looking at understanding impacts of the UDO. So I know that most of y'all were in the work session this morning, so we do have a work team that is helping us think through the impacts that the UDO may have through a long-term lens on displacement risk and affordable housing. So they may be looking at things like our opportunities for accessory dwelling units, the impact of duplex and triplex developments, and then of course you heard this morning about the affordable housing toolkit that our staff are working on in conjunction with planning as it relates to the UDO. And this group can also be a community body that can weigh in and help us understand how that's really playing out in neighborhoods. So the next Nest meeting, and probably the next opportunity that you all will have to hear some of their ideas, is on Wednesday, July 13th. I do want to remind everyone that the meetings can be viewed on the city's Facebook page and YouTube page and the government channel. So July 13th, 5:30 to 7 is that next opportunity. And we're asking Nest Commission at that time for each work group to come back with an initial work plan, any early ideas or recommendations that they want the full Nest Commission to consider, and then recommendations around what's the city currently doing that they'd like to see us do more of, maybe double down on. And so if you all determine later in this meeting that you will have a July meeting, you'll hear from Nest again in July, or else at the next available opportunity after that meeting. And that is this month's Nest update.
Okay, I don't see any questions from the committee. Thank you for that. We can move to the next item.
Thank you, Chair Watlington. This is Sean Heath again. So we can pull up a very short slide presentation on year-to-date progress and a preview of what's ahead for the committee. And we can go directly to slide 2. Great. So, as we approach the midpoint of the year, we thought it would be helpful to take a quick look, and I know the committee won't have much of an appetite for too long of a stare in the rearview mirror here, but just a real quick look at the work of Housing and Neighborhood Services during the first 5 months of the year. This is not intended to be an all-inclusive list. This does capture certain workflows that have not made their way through committee, but when we put this together, we were mindful of the work plan that was shared, the committee work plan that was shared with full council in early February. And as you're all aware, each of the committee chairs will be doing a work plan update for the respective committees at the June strategy session. So just to very quickly go down here through the list as a bit of a reminder, on city-owned land, of course, this is a best practice as it relates to bringing affordable housing into the marketplace in large cities that are going like we are across the country. Council discussed and approved staff's work to negotiate land conveyance agreements for 4 particular properties. This was through the RFP that went from November to January and the council discussion and vote in February of this year. As I've mentioned before on this particular item, this will play out over the course of the next year. This is really just one step in the process for the developers. We've now sent a strong signal what we're interested in, and those conversations are underway. But we would expect supplemental funding requests to come through the Housing Trust Fund RFP that we would see go out once we have the bond referendum in November. So when the dust settles on this, we're hopeful that it can bring 300 more units into the marketplace here as one among many of the strategies that we're embarking upon in order to increase the supply of affordable housing. On the Housing Trust Fund, with council's action in April, that of course depleted the existing HTF funds, 12.4 million was available. That would support as many as 600 new units in the marketplace here. You'll recall from those conversations that a number of those proposals were 9% LIHTC deals, one of which already received LIHTC funding and was now coming through for an HTF request, but the other ones will have to wait until the August timeframe to see how the dust settles there. It would be unusual for us to get more than 2 to 3 of the 9% deals per year. So when that's all said and done, we may have anywhere from $1.5 million to $3.5 million revert back to the trust fund that we would have available to use opportunistically this year, or just layer it in with the new money that we expect in November. On home ownership programs, linking some of this back to conversations earlier in this committee meeting, credit to Warren Wooten, Division Manager, and the Deputy Director Hefner for a lot of great work that's been done in this space. You'll recall from the March committee meeting, we provided a preview to you of directionally where we were headed with home ownership programs. And while there will be more to come throughout the year, the first item out of the gates will be an enhanced and revised House Charlotte program, which will launch in July of this year for both members of the public as well as employees. So we're really excited about this one. We've got additional money that's been set aside both through some of our federal sources as well as through the city manager's proposed budget. You'll recall the $2 million reference to homeownership program support for employees. So we know this is incredibly important for our community, and we look forward to having additional money and an even more attractive program available. On Home ARP, this of course was focused on various programming in support of homelessness related challenges in the community, with $2 million of that 11.6 going towards the Charlotte Rescue Mission, and then 9.6 million focused on a range of community partners that are providing tenant-based rental assistance, as well as supportive services that can all provide a bridge from homelessness into permanent supportive housing and or self-sufficiency. On source of income protections, of course, the ad hoc group met throughout last year. The ad hoc chairs reported out to this committee in February. Staff facilitated a conversation in March, focused on the one recommendation that really was policy related in nature in terms of extending the source of income protections to all city supported housing. Right now it's in place for the Housing Trust Fund, and this would of course extend that to any other forms of city supported housing. So that policy conversation was endorsed by committee and is ready for council, and we look forward to the opportunity to have that discussion with council at the late June business meeting. On staying in place, we will be in a position to provide a more perspective on that at the June committee meeting. We know that there's a particular interest from the committee in terms of seeing where's the action in terms of having a transparent view into what's happening in Washington Heights and Winterfield and Hidden Valley as it relates to our staying in place pilot geography. So we'll be back next month with a deeper dive into that. You just heard about the Nest Commission and community engagement, the Housing Trust Fund tune-up. We envision 2 connection points with committee on that item. One would be next month, just to provide some perspective on the scope and objectives and desired outcomes associated with the tune-up. And then at the end of summer, we'd be back to committee with a firmer point of view on some specific recommendations coming out of that work. And then finally, with ARPA funds, we know we have the $17 million that was earmarked from ARPA Tranche 1. And then in the city manager's overall budget presentation, he made reference to a recommendation of $50 million in community-facing investments from ARPA Tranche 2, which we'll receive later this month, and that 30 of that 50 million could be devoted to various housing-related work. So that is a quick review of the year-to-date progress report. It's been a busy 5 months. And then quickly on the last slide here, a little bit of a visual in terms of what to expect around the Bend. Neighborhood engagement, of course, is a 52-week per year kind of activity. To Councilmember Watlington's request, we'll come back in next month and get into more of the specifics in terms of how to activate certain things. I'll skip over the Housing Trust Fund and home ownership since I've already made reference to those. On land acquisition and utilization, I think the committee made its interest in this particular area very clear last month, as well as your view on the sense of urgency associated with that work. So we are engaged in work with our data team here internally, identifying publicly owned land in the city with a particular emphasis on neighborhoods that are vulnerable to displacement, either our staying in place pilot neighborhoods and or corridors of opportunity, and also expanding that work to include station areas associated with the Silver Line based on the conversation that we had at the committee level last month. So we'll be prepared to provide a summer update on that work at the committee level. For staying in place, the Neighborhood Equity and Stabilization Commission, as mentioned before, we will continue to find opportunities to bring those topics here into the committee. And lastly, I would mention at the very bottom right here with the housing bond referendum in November, looking forward to that pending council's final decisions around the FY23 budget. And then with the Housing and Jobs Summit, the terminology isn't final there, but we just wanted this to be a recognition that there's an incredibly strong connection point between housing and jobs. And while you could go through a fairly long list of ingredients that make for a strong city, having affordable housing and good paying jobs would clearly rank at or near the very top. So, we're still in the front end of thinking through what that can and should look like. There have been some conversations about possibly accelerating that November feels like it's too far into the year. So more to come on that, but just wanted you to have a sense for what's around the bend in terms of committee work coming up. That's it for the presentation. If there are any questions on any of this, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, we can close out with a quick discussion on the committee calendar.
Thanks, Sean. Just real quick, Can you talk a little bit about the Sterling community before we move to the next item? Can you just give us a quick update? We know that they're meeting tonight, so I want to make sure that that's on the community's radar.
Yes, for sure. So, this all moved very quickly last week. So the Sterling community in South Charlotte, in District 3, very close to the town of Pineville, and in some of the media reports, it was reported as a Pineville neighborhood, but it is most definitely within Charlotte city limits. So a new ownership group for, I'm not certain the exact number of homes, but it could be north of 50 homes, issued a letter to residents in the Sterling community over the last couple of weeks indicating that they would be required to vacate their premises, these are rental homes, by June 8th. So tonight, Pastor Cunningham from China Grove AME Zion Church is facilitating a community conversation. He's hosting a community conversation for concerned members of the community to have an opportunity to hear from various community groups and partners. So the City of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, Dream Key Partners, and other organizations will be on site tonight in order to provide some perspective on 3 areas of interest for these residents. One would be where to turn for questions they may have of a legal nature in terms of understanding their rights as tenants. Number 2, where to turn for potential financial resources that could assist these individuals to the extent they're in a position where they're having to make very quick transitions into different housing. And number 3, where to turn for help with housing navigation itself, since we know this is a particularly challenging time in the market to find affordable housing. So we will have city staff represented there this evening. It's at 6:30 p.m. at the China Grove AME Zion Church. And I will report back, Councilmember Watlington, based on how the event tonight goes.
Thank you so much. And if you are watching and you are a member of the Sterling community, please know that we are definitely supportive of you. And if you need help, you can reach out directly to the city, victoria.watlington@charlottenc.com, or you can call 311 and we can get you routed appropriately. Thank you. We can move to our last item.
Okay. On the committee calendar, so last week I had a chance to chat with Chair Watlington briefly, and we noted that the decision made by committee at the beginning of the year was there would be no committee meetings, no Great Neighborhoods Committee meetings during July and August. And so I did a little benchmarking last week for the other committees, and obviously all of you serve on multiple committees, and as you would guess, certain committees are not meeting in July and August. Some are meeting in one month but not the other. And I believe there's at least one committee that will not meet in July and August. But as Councilmember Watlington and I were looking at the calendar and given all of the work that needs to come through committee, waiting 90 days to have a committee meeting between June and September seemed like too long of a gap. So we'd like to propose that we explore having a committee meeting on potentially both of those dates, and we can work with OCS to evaluate availability to see if there are any real challenges in terms of committee member availability. But at a minimum, we'd like to book one of those and possibly even both. Councilmember Watlington, anything you wanted to add to that item?
No, that's all. I just wanted to get a feel for the group of how folks were thinking about that. So real quick, if we could just go around and let us know your preference. Graham?
Whatever you think is best, Madam Chairman, I'm there.
Okay. Johnson?
Yeah, that's fine. We're just going to have to consider the July election. I know that you'll do that around the date. So yeah, whatever you think is best. Thank you.
Sure. Phipps?
When exactly is the summer session supposed to kick in for council?
I believe it's August.
Oh, the month of August?
Mm-hmm.
It's actually, if you give me one moment, I think it's June and July.
Oh.
Because of the odd year for elections, but give me a second.
While we're waiting, Newton?
For me, count me in.
Okay.
Okay,
So, yeah, it's more June and July because the meetings are reduced during those time periods.
Okay.
okay. We can, at the staff level, we can look at the options for those dates, Councilmember Watlington, and then circle back before we cement anything in stone.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Okay.
Well, that will conclude our meeting for today. I appreciate you all, and we'll see you together next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.